All right, so moving on to the final segment, I'll be sharing my top 10 quarterbacks from the 2010s. So, again, this is top 10 based off of what these 10 quarterbacks did to put themselves on my list for the 2010s. By any means, this is not how I rank these quarterbacks all time. This is just how I rank them in the 2010s. So, starting off from 1 all the way down to 10. So, with my top 10 2010s top 10 quarterback list from the 2010s, number 1, Tom Brady. Tom Brady, in my opinion, the greatest football player ever put on a pair of football pads. He's number 1. Number 2 is Aaron Rodgers, one of the most skillful quarterbacks to ever throw a football, has one of the best arms in NFL history. Same can be said with number 3, Drew Brees. Drew Brees was definitely an impact at the quarterback position in the 2010s. Nobody really played the position better than him other than those two respective players that I mentioned. So Drew Brees at 3, Russell Wilson at 4 deserves a lot of credit for what he did with the Seattle Seahawks, being a mobile guy. 5, Peyton Manning. 6, Ben Roethlisberger. 7, Andrew Luck. 8, Joe Flacco for that phenomenal Super Bowl run that he went on in the beginning part of the 2010s. 9, Phillip Rivers. And 10 for what Patrick Mahomes did when he got the chance to be a starter and what he did in the later part of the 2010s. But I'll get into a deeper dive. A lot of people might have questioned why I have Peyton Manning lower than some of the quarterbacks that I mentioned. Why do I have Patrick Mahomes on my list? We're going to get into that. So a deeper dive here. Tom Brady has to be number 1. He's been the best quarterback of all time. And he was the best quarterback of the 2010s because he was consistent. And Tom Brady in the 2010s won 3 Super Bowls in the 2010s, 5 Super Bowl appearances overall in the 2010s. He was dominant with the New England Patriots, that dynasty of him and Bill Belichick. He also won 2 MVPs in the 2010s. And nobody was ever as consistent as Tom Brady. And I got to say, he was the best quarterback of the 2010s. Best quarterback of all time. Number 2, the reason why I have Aaron Rodgers at 2, he's a former Super Bowl champion, 2-time MVP, 2 MVPs that he won in the 2010s. If you watch Aaron Rodgers, his highlight tape is phenomenal. I mean, he has the best arm in NFL history. How he used to throw the ball, I'm just sitting here reminiscing of the days he used to be in the yellow and green and white for the Green Bay Packers. Because, man, that man had a phenomenal arm. I got to say, he's number 2 all time in the 2010s list. The only problem is he should have won more Super Bowls with the Green Bay Packers. No ifs or doubts about that. Definitely should have won more rings with the Packers. 3 is Drew Brees for a reason, because Drew Brees had an elite arm, phenomenal arm in the pocket. I mean, I can't imagine someone that had more zip on the ball than Drew Brees did. He shattered several passing records in the 2010s. The only sad part is him and Sean Payton, just like Aaron Rodgers, should have won more rings in their prime. Drew Brees and Sean Payton were there several times to get more rings in New Orleans, but they missed out on several opportunities. And if Drew Brees got more than, I think he should have at least won 3 rings, to be honest with you guys. The skill level that Drew Brees had, if they just cashed in on the opportunities that presented themselves, they just couldn't finish at times. Now, 4 might be controversial for Russell Wilson, but put some respect on Mr. Unlimited's name. What he did with the Seattle Seahawks, he was phenomenal. He was the backbone of the Seattle Seahawks for a decade. Realistically, if he retired from the Seattle Seahawks and you discredit what he did, or you don't count what he did for the Denver Broncos, he would be in the Hall of Fame if he retired after the Seattle Seahawks days. He was the backbone for the Seattle Seahawks. He did help them win a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowl appearances, even though they should have ran the ball at the 1-yard line 2015 against the Patriots. But still won a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowl appearances, really was the backbone of this team. Even when the cracks started to show in the Legion of Boom with guys like Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, they were starting to fade away, not as dominant on the defensive side of the ball. Guess who was there? Russell Wilson. So, got to put some respect on his name. How he was as a dual threat, definitely one of the best quarterbacks of the 2010s. Now, Peyton Manning gets 5 because he's not higher on my list because of what happened over the last 5 years. I mean, he only did play 5 years in the 2010s. He actually 4 years, to be honest, because he did miss a year with that neck injury before he was released by the Indianapolis Colts. So that takes it away. He was blown out by the Seattle Seahawks in 2014 Super Bowl when he had one of the greatest offenses of all time of Peyton Manning, Wes Welker, Eric Decker, Demaryius Thomas, Julian Thomas. They got spanked and smoked by the Legion of Boom in the Super Bowl in 2014. So that discredits him. Plus, that also discredits him for what happened in 2015. He was done. He was finished. That defense that the Broncos had in 2015 really carried him to winning his final Super Bowl. And I'm not out here sabotaging Peyton Manning's name. He's the second greatest quarterback of all time, or the fourth greatest quarterback of all time, in my opinion. But in the 2010s, regardless of that MVP year, there were 2 bad seasons that he had that I have to put him at 5 at best. Now, where we at? 6, Ben Roethlisberger gets that spot because he's Big Ben. He's always had the Steelers in position to go on runs. He did help them get to 1 Super Bowl appearance in the 2010s. He's just like these other guys like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. I think he should have won more rings. He did finish his career with 2, but I think there was more room on Ben Roethlisberger's plate to at least get 3 or 4 Super Bowls in his career. But consistency is the reason why Big Ben is number 6. 7 is Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, one of the greatest in my lifetime, one of the greatest scouted quarterbacks of all time coming from college. One of the greatest prospects of all time. I mean, the man was great, phenomenal. He was spectacular at the quarterback position. And I got to say, it goes down as one of the biggest what-ifs, because what if he was actually healthy? What if the Colts actually gave him a good offensive line? What if he had more room in the gas tank? Andrew Luck might have brought a Super Bowl to the Indianapolis Colts if they continued to build around him properly, but he just retired at such a young age. So much left on the table in terms of what Andrew Luck was capable of doing in his NFL career. Did get them to an AFC Championship appearance one time, but man, definitely had a lot to give to the Colts. 8, Joe Flacco. You got to put some respect on Joe Flacco's name. That 2012-2013 playoff run that the Ravens had is one of the greatest playoff runs in NFL history. I mean, because Joe Flacco and the Ravens were underdogs. Joe Flacco in that Super Bowl run defeated Andrew Luck. He defeated Peyton Manning, defeated Tom Brady, defeated Colin Kaepernick. You have to say he's one of the best quarterbacks of the 2010s. And he was one of the most consistent, too, at the time. I mean, he racked up a lot of playoff wins for the Baltimore Ravens, always had them afloat until the team really started crashing down and slowly, in their own way, rebuilded towards the end of the 2010s and transitioned to Lamar Jackson taking over the team. But, man, Joe Flacco, I got to say, definitely one of the best quarterbacks of the 2010s. 9, Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers was always consistent, but the thing with him is he can never finish. Even having, at one point, I believe it was 2010, the one point had the best offense and the best defense in the National Football League, but still couldn't win a Super Bowl with the Chargers. His problem was turnovers, being a turnover machine, not winning the big games, and not getting over the hump of beating the elite quarterbacks in the AFC over the years of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, etc. So that was the problem with Phillip Rivers. But definitely an NFL Hall of Famer for sure. And 10, Mahomes. When Patrick Mahomes took over for Alex Smith, y'all got to put him on there. Even though he only started a few years in the late 2010s, he won a Super Bowl in the late 2010s. So, and was an MVP and went head-to-head, toe-to-toe with Tom Brady in the AFC Championship. So I got to, based off of what I seen, the play that I saw, he has to be top 10 of the 2010s list. Now, honorable mentions, of course, are Matt Ryan that should have won a Super Bowl. Did win an MVP. He's an honorable mention. Eli Manning is also an honorable mention that was a Super Bowl champion in the 2010s. Tony Romo was a phenomenal player, but just never won a Super Bowl. Those 3 quarterbacks are my honorable mentions. You could possibly throw Cam Newton in there for that 2015 run. But those are my top 10 quarterbacks of all time in the 2010s list. And as my voice goes out, that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.